The light hit me before I even understood why I had stopped walking. Sparks poured off the north wall like a bright waterfall, bouncing off steel and dying on the floor in tiny points of light. The air in the half-built bay on the south side of Chicago was so cold it bit the inside of my nose. Every breath turned into a thin white cloud. Slush clung to my boots. Extension cords ran across the concrete like dark veins, feeding a generator that growled in the corner. The metal around me held the cold the way stone holds night. Bare columns, raw beams, unfinished walls. It was the kind of place where one mistake could sit quiet for months, and then ruin lives in a second. I was supposed to be in and out. Take one look at the bracing, sign off on the plan, go back to my office, and get on a call with the city before lunch. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket, buzzing against the rolled drawings. I let it buzz. Another shower of sparks flared. A welding arc hissed and snapped, bright enough to paint the steel white for a heartbeat. I stepped closer, lifting my collar against the wind that pushed through the unfinished seams. "Hot work on the north wall," I called, raising my voice over the generator. "That section is not cleared until the strut is pinned and the sway brace is locked." The arc cut off at once. The bay dropped back into gray, leaving a bright afterimage in my eyes. The figure on the scissor lift straightened, shoulders broad under a dark work jacket. Gloves, hood, welding mask down. Then a hand went up. The mask lifted. The work light caught her face like it had been waiting. Dark hair was pinned back under a bandana, loose waves escaping around her cheeks. Soot dusted her skin in small specks that looked almost like freckles. Her eyes were steady and dark, fixed right on my face. Not drifting. Not shy. Clear and alert, with a small tease at the corners, like she was a half step ahead of me and wanted to see what I did next. "I'm cleared," she said. Her voice was low and a little rough from cold air and long days, but polite. No fake charm, no edge she did not earn. "The brace is in. Gusset plate is tack set. Pins are seated. If you want to stop this weld, you can come up here and look at the pins yourself." Her gloved knuckles tapped the rail beside her, one sharp tap. Then she just waited, eyes still on me. A challenge, but not for pride. A challenge for the sake of the steel. I climbed the lift ladder halfway and leaned in. A temporary brace ran to a cleat I had missed on the print. Tack welds were clean. Bracing pins were seated. Safety clips were in place and bent over like they were supposed to be. She had built the whole setup the way I wanted it done. Tight, honest, ready to take a load. My phone buzzed again. I swiped it silent without looking. "Grayson Hale," I said. "Structural engineer on the Rivera Steel retrofit." She didn't flinch. "Amaya Rivera," she replied. "Welder, Rivera." The name hit me twice. Once from the project sign outside. Once from the invoices on my desk. Rivera Steel. The family shop that somehow beat bigger firms for this job and kept holding on while Winter and the city tried to push them out. I lifted the drawings between us. "The city wants a dynamic load test on the new transfer beam. If that beam twists under load, they shut this bay down until spring." Amaya tipped her head a little. Her gaze never left my eyes. "Then the beam won't twist," she said. "No brag, no speech. Just a line placed as clean as a weld bead." Footsteps sounded behind me, heavy and familiar in the way job site boots always are. A cough rolled up from a chest that had taken in too much dust and too much cold. Kowalski stepped out of the shadows, foreman's vest over a thick sweater, mustache frosted with the weather. He looked like a man who trusted steel more than people and had the scars to back it up. "She's the best hand in the shop," he said, nodding toward Amaya. "And she's the boss's daughter, so keep your voice respectful." "Always," I said. He jerked his thumb toward the far end of the bay where plastic tarps hung like curtains. "Inspector's coming tomorrow. Vince Mercer. City man. He likes clean boots and dirty deals." At that name, something changed in Amaya's face. The hint of a smile stayed, but the warmth dropped out of it for a second. "Vince," she said, like the word had grit in it. Kowalski lowered his voice. He's been sniffing around the permit like a dog outside a butcher's shop. If he finds anything he can twist, he'll twist it. I looked back at the transfer beam. The steel that would carry the load of an upper level and keep a roof from sagging. The numbers in my head were clear. If that beam buckled, this whole bay became a story on the evening news. Steel did not care about politics. It cared about pins, bolts, welds, heat, and truth. Amaya dropped her mask and lit the arc again. Sparks bloomed bright and wild, filling the air with the sharp, clean smell of hot metal and ozone. The growl of the generator swallowed the rest of the world. I was supposed to head back to my office. Instead, I stayed until she finished the pass. Not because the drawings required me to, because leaving felt wrong while she was up there alone carrying the heat for my calculations. By the time she killed the arc and lowered the mask again, my call with the city was long past. My phone showed missed calls and reminders. I cleared the screen with my thumb and slid it back into my pocket. The next morning, the wind cut sharper. The sky over the south side was the color of flat steel. Snow had turned to gray slush, and the whole bay felt even colder. Vince Mercer walked in like he was visiting a showroom, not a live job. Long coat that did not belong near mud. Shoes polished so bright they looked fake against the dirty floor. Hard hat sitting on his head like he wore it for the photo, not the work. Clipboard tucked under one arm, city badge clipped where everyone could see it. He chewed gum slow and loud. "Morning," he said, sweeping his eyes over the bay without letting them land on any one face for long. "Which one of you is in charge?" "Foreman," Kowalski said, stepping up. "Rivera Steel." Vince's gaze passed over him, touched on me for half a second, then moved to Amaya standing by a rack of filler rods. Her gloves were tucked into her belt. Her bandana was tied tight. Her posture was straight. Vince's gum popped. "Cute," he said, nodding once toward the welding setup like it was a toy. "City's got a list of requirements for dynamic load tests. I'm here to make sure this operation is ready." I stepped forward and held out my hand. "Grayson Hale, engineer of record." He looked at my hand. He did not take it. "Engineer," he said. "Great. You understand liability." He flipped his clipboard open with 2 fingers like the paper might stain him. "My notes say there was a delay on inspection documentation. There's also a concern about bracing on the north wall. If something shifts under load, that's an automatic stop." Not my choice. Policy. "We'll pass inspection the right way," I said. "Every brace is logged. Every pin is tagged. Every bolt is torqued and marked. The documentation is ready." Vince leaned closer to me, voice dropping like we were sharing a joke. I could smell his gum. "Documentation can disappear," he said. "Schedules can slip. Winter gets expensive." Quote. Amaya moved closer, just enough that I could feel her in my side view. She did not hide behind me. She did not try to cut me off. She simply stepped into the geometry of the moment and changed it. "Inspector Mercer," she said. Her tone was even. "If you're here to inspect steel, inspect steel. If you're here for anything else, you're in the wrong building." His smile froze for a second, then flattened. "Watch your tone," he told her. I shifted half a step, quiet, placing myself between him and the work area. Not dramatic, just a wall. "Let's walk the bracing line," I said. "You'll see the pins and the torque marks. Then you can sign your report." He stared at me long enough to make a point, then turned, shoes leaving clean prints on dirty concrete. "Fine," he said, "but I'm thorough." 3 days to the load test, 1 inspector who liked shortcuts, 1 beam that could not fail, 1 welder I trusted more than the man with the badge. And for the first time in a long time, my schedule did not feel like the most important thing in the room. The dynamic load test went on the calendar for Friday. 3 days. 1 beam. 1 shot to keep this bay open through winter. The next 2 days, Amaya and I moved through the steel like we had worked together for years. We did not talk a lot. We did not have to. I checked calculations, adjusted temporary supports, and traced the load path with chalk on the beam. She measured, cut, ground, and welded. She treated every joint like it mattered. Because it did. On Wednesday night, the bay emptied. The generator died down. The last crew truck pulled away. The city lights outside turned the snow at the curb into a flat gray line. Kowalski locked the tool cage and waved once on his way out. "You two don't stay all night," he said. "This place will be here in the morning." He left anyway. The heavy door closed. The sound bounced around the empty steel. Amaya stayed. So did I. My phone showed a meeting reminder at 8 o'clock and a call at 9 o'clock. There was also a text from my sister asking if I was still coming to dinner. She had made a reservation and sent me the time 3 times. I opened the messages and canceled in 3 lines. No story, just new times. Work first. Amaya was tightening a clamp when the light from my phone hit the steel. She glanced over. "Schedule trouble?" she asked. "Steel trouble," I said. That pulled a small smile from her. Quick, private, gone almost as fast as it came. She went back to the clamp. I went back to the beam. I ran my gloved hand along its web, feeling the cold and the small imperfections under the paint. "If anything is going to fail," I said, mostly to myself, "it will fail under dynamic load." She straightened and wiped her hands on her jacket. "Then we catch it before it catches us." There was something about the way she said us. Not you, us. We fell into a rhythm that felt too natural for 2 people who had just met. I held plates while she tacked them. She gave my hand a short tap when my grip needed to shift a ½ inch. When I checked the angle on a brace, she read my face and made a small adjustment before I spoke. During a short break, she sat on an overturned bucket next to a small heater that hummed and pushed weak, warm air into the cold bay. The heater was losing, but it was trying. She flipped open a small metal lunch tin on her lap. "I brought something," she said. I expected a thermos of coffee. Instead, she unwrapped a square of dense bread from wax paper. The top was sprinkled with sugar crystals that caught the light. Warm cinnamon hit the air right away. "Pan dulce," she said. "My aunt's recipe. It is better warm. Winter does not care about ovens." She held it out like it was nothing, like she did this every day. "Thank you," I said, her chin lifted just a little. "Eat." Engineers forget that part. I took a bite. It was sweet and heavy, in a good way, real food after too many vending machines. The taste cut through the metallic air and settled my stomach. As I chewed, she leaned closer to adjust a clamp on the beam near my shoulder. Her hand brushed my collar and she paused. "You picked up grit," she said. She used the back of her knuckles to wipe a streak of dust from my coat collar. Small motion. Simple, but the feeling of her knuckles against my neck made my shoulders go still for a second. She noticed. Her hand paused. Her eyes flicked up to my face. "Okay?" she asked. It was a clear check, not a flirt, asking if the touch was fine. "Yes," I said. My voice came out steady, but I felt the word in my chest more than in my throat. Her mouth curved a little. That teasing warmth came back into her eyes. Then she dropped her hand and went back to work like she had not just warmed a concrete bay more than the heater did. On Thursday afternoon, the job changed. Not because the steel liked drama. Because someone gave it a reason. I was walking the bracing line with Kowalski, checking tags and the bright orange torque marks we had painted on each high-tension bolt. When a bolt is at the right torque, the stripe on the nut lines up with the stripe on the metal. If the bolt turns, the stripes break. Most of them were perfect. Names and numbers in a clean table. Then I saw one that was wrong. The stripe on the bolt and the stripe on the plate did not line up. There was a thin, jagged break in the paint, almost like a hairline crack. I crouched. My breath fogged in the beam of my flashlight. When I moved the light, my stomach dropped. The bolt head was gone. Not loose, gone. The washer was gone, too. In the hole, there was nothing but dark space where steel should have been. "Damn!" I said under my breath. "What is it?" Kowalski asked, bending down beside me. "High-tension bolt missing," I said. "Grade A 490, washer gone, too." I shifted the light. Another bolt head was missing, then another. Each hole had a clean ring of metal where a washer had once pressed, a bright circle under the grime. This was not a mistake. This was intent. Someone with a wrench and knowledge had pulled them. A cold line ran up my spine. It was not fear. It was math. I could see the load path in my head, the way the beam would twist under dynamic load with those bolts gone. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Wide shots, close-ups, the broken torque stripes, the empty holes. I made sure the time and date showed in the frame. "Who would do this?" Kowalski muttered. I did not say the name that flashed in my head. A man with polished shoes and a city badge who liked encouragement. We moved down the line to the diagonal bracing. Those braces kept the beam from rolling during temporary loading. Each pin should have had a cotter clip fully seated and bent over. I found one clip hanging loose, barely holding the pin. The pin itself was pulled halfway through, like someone had started to remove it and then stopped. Under normal conditions, it might have stayed. Under vibration, under a live dynamic test, it would walk out. The brace would slacken. The beam would twist. My hands stayed steady. My jaw did not. "We have sabotage," I said quietly. My body went still in a different way. Not in fear. In focus. I felt Amaya before I saw her. The quick, even sound of her boots on concrete. The way the air shifted when she got close. She came up beside us with her welding mask hooked at her hip, gloves tucked into her back pocket. "What happened?" she asked. I held my phone where she could see the picture. "Look!" Her eyes sharpened. She crouched next to me, gloved fingers tracing the edge of the hole without touching inside. "High-tension bolts," she said. "Grade A 490. Washers were here." She pointed at the clean ring. "Someone pulled them. Recently." She glanced up at the torque paint marks. "And the seal is broken. They were right at last check." Kowalski swore. "This is someone trying to get us shut down." Amaya swallowed, but her voice did not shake. "Or trying to make us fail the test so they can say we are not fit for this job." I could feel the wind cutting through the bay doors. It hit her side of the body first. Without thinking too hard, I shifted closer and turned a little so my coat blocked the draft from her. It was a small thing. Angle my body, break the wind. Her shoulder brushed my arm, she noticed. She did not step away. That small permission did something to me. It tied the job to more than bolts and plates. It tied it to the person who would be under this steel with me when the load hit. "What do we do?" Kowalski asked. "We replace every missing bolt," I said. "With new washers. We repin and relock that brace. Then we reinforce the region around that joint before the crack grows." Amaya's head snapped toward me. "There is a crack?" I shifted the flashlight and ran it along the beam web. You could barely see it. A faint line at the toe of a weld near the connection. Hair thin and new. "The start of one," I said. "If we pretend it is not there, the load test will rip it open." Her eyes narrowed, not in fear, in calculation. "Then we do not pretend." We moved fast, because steel does not reward slow pride. It only rewards correct action. While Kowalski unlocked the bolt cage, I logged the missing inventory by hand and printed the photos on the office printer so there was more than just a digital record. Ink on paper still matters when someone tries to make evidence vanish. Amaya laid out the fix like she was laying out a recipe. "Fish plates on both sides," she said, drawing rectangles on the beam with chalk. "Grind to clean metal. Preheat. Run multiple passes. Then we check with mag particle." I opened my laptop on a work table and rechecked the capacity with added plates. I adjusted the temporary jacks to take some of the strain off the joint while we worked. We were not just trying to make it look better, we were restoring strength. The bay grew colder as the day dropped. The Chicago wind pressed against the tarps. The heater hummed louder, losing the fight. We did not leave. The beam and the bolts and the quiet line on that web were ours to answer for now. We pulled new high-tension bolts from the cage one by one. I watched the numbers on the inventory sheet as carefully as I watched the steel. 4 missing, I said. 4 replaced. Washers, too. Got it, Kowalski answered, handing them over like they were worth more than their weight in steel. I slid the first bolt through the hole, feeling the snug fit of the shank against the plate. Washer, nut, then the long, slow pull of the torque wrench until it clicked at the specified value. No guessing. No, close enough. Real torque. Orange torque seal paint went on in a clean stripe from the nut to the plate. If that nut shifted even a fraction later, the paint would crack and tell on it. We did it again and again. An entire connection rebuilt in careful, measured moves. At the bracing pin, Amaya stood on the lift to get a straight line of sight. She pulled the pin all the way out, checked it, then shoved it back through until the hole on the far side lined up perfectly. New cotter clip, she said. She slid the clip in and bent the legs over fully. No, almost. No, good enough. Then she added a loop of fresh safety wire and twisted it tight. Again, she said, checking the others. We checked every brace on that line. Every pin, every clip, every stripe of torque seal. Anything that could move without permission got attention. The crack, though, sat there waiting. A thin line near the toe of a weld, where the web met the flange. Not big, not loud, just patient. Amaya adjusted the lift and rolled in close. I set a tray with a temp stick kit, a heat gun, and a grinder on the platform for her. We were both quiet. The base settled around us like it knew this part mattered more than the rest. They tried to make you fail, I said. They tried to make the steel fail, she corrected. I just live under it. She pushed her bandana tighter under her helmet and tugged her gloves on, flexing her fingers inside the leather. I stayed on the ground beside the lift, one hand on the rail, flashlight beam cutting across the joint as she started grinding. Old paint and scale flew in small sparks as she took the crack down to clean, bright metal. She moved slow and even, careful not to chase the crack too far but not leaving any of it hidden. When she finished, the line was gone, replaced by a smooth, shining V ready to be filled. Preheat, she said. I held the heat gun, aiming it at the steel while she checked temperature with a temp stick. At 250 degrees Fahrenheit, the stick smeared, and she gave a small nod. Hold it, she said, holding. I answered. Then she struck the arc. Light exploded in the bay. The sound of the weld filled the air, a sharp hiss and crackle that swallowed the outside world. Ozone burned the back of my nose. The Chicago cold fought with the heat rising off the steel, making a strange fog near the joint. I watched the puddle move along the groove, a small pool of molten metal that could either save a connection or hide a future fracture. The puddle followed her hand, steady and controlled. Root pass in, she called through the mask. Time? 40 seconds, I said, checking the watch I had clipped to the rail. She held the arc a moment longer, then broke it, and let the metal cool just enough. No rushing, no idle time. Layer by layer, she built up the weld. Each pass, she chipped away the slag, brushed, and checked. I watched for distortion, for any sign the beam was moving. The laser level's line stayed where it should, cutting the edge of the plate in a straight line. Once the fish plates went on, she repeated the whole thing. Grind, preheat, weld, chip, check. Hours passed, measured in passes and temperature readings instead of minutes. Kowalski came back in at one point with a thermos and 3 foam cups. He poured soup and left it on a crate without making a speech. The smell of broth and vegetables drifted through the metallic air. Eat before it turns into ice, he said. We did, grabbing spoonfuls between tasks. It wasn't romantic. It was survival. The heat in my stomach felt like another kind of brace, pushing back against the cold. Near midnight, the repair was done. We wrapped the welds in insulating blankets and let them cool slow. No sudden chill, no quick shock. Then came the test we could control. Mag particle. I sprayed white contrast paint along the weld toes and waited for it to dry. Then I dusted fine black particles over the area and held an ultraviolet light close. If the crack was still there, the particles would gather in a dark line. The beam stayed clean. No lines formed, just scattered specks on a smooth field. Amaya let out a breath that sounded like she had been holding it all day. She rested her forearm on the lift rail, helmet still down for a second as if she needed the shade. I stared up at her and waited. After a moment, she lifted the mask. Her eyes were glossy from the light and the cold, not from tears. A streak of soot crossed her temple, just under her bandana. I raised my hand, slow, palm open, and stopped inches from her skin. She looked from my fingers to my face. Question in her eyes, not fear, just a clear, silent, "What are you doing?" "May I?" I asked quietly. Her shoulders softened a fraction. She gave me the smallest nod. I brushed my thumb lightly along her temple, wiping the soot away. Her skin was warm under the grime. I pulled my hand back as soon as it was gone. "Thank you," she said. "For the soot?" I asked. "For staying," she said. "Steel doesn't get fixed alone," I answered. She smiled at that. It was not the quick, teasing curve from before. It was softer, deeper, edged with something like relief. "Neither do people," she said. The words landed harder than I expected. I looked away for a second, at the beam that was now stronger than the story someone tried to write for it. The torque stripes were clean. The plates were solid. The braces were locked. Friday came with air so cold it made the metal sing when you tapped it. Vince showed up right on time. Same long coat, same polished shoes, same hard hat, sitting too high. The only thing different was the way his eyes moved. More alert, less lazy. He headed straight for the repaired joint, chewing his gum like nothing had changed. "Big night?" he asked, crouching down. "Necessary night," I said. He frowned at the plates, the welds, the new torque stripes. "Repairs like this need authorization. If you weld structural members without approval, I can shut this down." Amaya stepped up from behind my right shoulder, welding mask in one hand. Her jaw was set. There was no fear on her face, only a steady kind of anger. "If you are here to make the steel safe," she said, "this is what that looks like." Vince gave her a slow once-over with his eyes. It felt like he was checking for weakness, not for truth. "You must be Rivera," he said. "Shame if this shop gets buried in red tape." She did not give him a smile. "Shame if someone thinks red tape is stronger than steel," she answered. He stepped in closer to her, invading that small bubble of space people deserve. I moved without thinking, my body sliding between them until he was facing my chest instead of hers. "Inspector Mercer," I said calmly. "There's room to talk without crowding her." He bristled. "Don't tell me how to do my job." "I'm not," I replied. "I'm telling you how to respect this site." I felt Amaya's hand touch my arm, not clinging, not pulling. Just a light press at the back of my sleeve, a signal that she was there and that she wanted the barrier. Her fingers stayed there for a heartbeat, warm through the fabric. Vince's jaw worked. "Why the last-minute repairs?" he asked. I opened the folder I had prepared. Printed photos, inventory logs, torque charts. A detailed drawing with the joint circled. "Because someone removed high-tension bolts from a gusset plate in a blind recess," I said. "Because someone half-pulled a bracing pin. Because those actions would have caused torsion and crack growth under dynamic load." Quote, I laid the photos out on a nearby table, the broken torque stripes, the empty holes, the clean washer rings, the missing bolts in the cage log. Kowalski dropped a second folder next to mine. "Tool cage was locked," he said. "Only 3 keys, mine, Rivera's, and the inspector's temporary access badge." Vince's chewing slowed. His eyes flicked between the pictures, the joint, and my face. "That's a serious accusation," he said. "Then take it seriously," I replied. "We've already requested badge logs from the North Door reader and a new inspector for future visits." "And we called the union," Kowalski added. A woman in a union jacket walked in as he said it, with a city security officer at her side. The officer held a small tablet. "Inspector Mercer," the officer said. "Badge logs show your ID used at 11:46 p.m. Wednesday at the North Bay door. No visit was scheduled." Vince's gums stopped moving. He tried to laugh it off. "I was verifying." Verifying with missing bolts, the union representative cut in. In the middle of the night? Alone? Without the foreman? Quote. Vince's shoulders stiffened. The shine on his shoes did not help him now. The officer held out a hand. We need you to step outside while we sort this. Your report will be reviewed. For the first time, Vince looked small in the bay. On his way out, his eyes landed on me again. There was anger there, and something else. Surprise that someone had chosen steel over silence. Write your report, I said quietly. Write it clean. He did not answer. He just walked. And finally, the only thing left between us and the test was the steel itself. The dynamic load test started at noon. By then, the sky over Chicago was a flat white sheet. The cold came in sideways. Breath turned to smoke even inside the bay when the doors opened. The city engineer arrived with a small team. Different face from Vince. This one wore worn work boots and actually checked the tread at the edge of a puddle before he stepped. His hard hat was scuffed. His clipboard had actual notes on it. Morning, he said. You must be Hale. I nodded. Yes, sir. Quote. He glanced at the repaired joint, at the plates, at the torque stripes. His eyes sharpened in a way I respected. He was not looking for excuses. He was looking for truth. Rivera? He asked. Amaya stepped forward, welding jacket on, gloves tucked into her belt, mask hanging at her side. Yes, she said. He gave her a short nod. Nice work on those beads, he said. I have seen worse on brand new bridges. That small, honest praise put a tiny spark in her eyes again. We moved to the test setup. Concrete blocks were stacked on the floor near the beam. Sensors were fixed along the web and flanges. A hydraulic jack sat ready to push the load up into the steel, while a readout screen waited to show us numbers that could make or break months of work. Everyone quieted. Kowalski stood with his hands on his hips, jaws set. The union representative leaned against a column, arms crossed. The city security officer stayed near the back, tablet in hand, watchful. Amaya took a place beside the beam, one hand resting on a column. I stood at the monitor with the city engineer. Ready? He asked. Ready, I said. The jack began to press. Slowly, the load transfer climbed. Numbers on the screen ticked upward. The beam took the weight and flexed, just a little. Steel always moves. It is supposed to. My eyes moved between the readout and the beam itself. The repaired joint sat in my peripheral vision, solid and quiet. The torque stripes did not crack. The plates did not shift. The brace did not twitch. At a set point, the engineer called out, "Hold!" The jack stopped. The beam hummed a little under the stress. A low tone you feel more than hear. Deflection. Within the expected curve. No sudden drops. No spikes. He watched the monitor for a full, slow count, then nodded. Continue. We went higher. The worst-case live load. The kind of pressure that would show any lies we had told the steel. The numbers rose, plateaued, then settled. My shoulders did not move. My jaw did not, either. I kept my face flat and professional, because that was my job. Inside my chest, something tight loosened. The engineer leaned close to the screen, then stepped back and looked up at the beam. It is good, he said. No excessive deflection. No audible slip. Instrumentation is clean. He glanced at me. Nice catch on the crack. Nice weld on the plates, I said, and tilted my head toward Amaya. He followed my gaze and nodded. Nice weld, he agreed. He signed the form on his clipboard, then handed it to me and to the union rep to countersign. Rivera Steel's bay stayed open. Winter work would go on. People would stay paid. The building would get finished the way it was meant to be. When the last sensor was removed and the jack rolled away, the bay suddenly felt bigger, lighter. The union representative clapped Kowalski on the shoulder and said, "You're clear. We'll handle the Mercer mess." She gave Amaya a look that said something more than words. Respect. Then she left. The city engineer shook my hand with a grip that meant it. "You write good reports," he said. "Better than most." I gave a small smile. Steel does not read reports. It only knows if we did it right. He liked that. He left with his crew. One by one, the others drifted out. The security officer, the helpers. The sound of their steps faded. In the end, it was just the three of us again. Me, Amaya, Kowalski. The foreman watched us for a moment, then shook his head like a man who had seen more than enough for 1 week. "I am going to check the guys on the south side," he said. "Try not to bring the city down on my head again today, yeah?" "No promises," Amaya said. He snorted, muttered something that sounded like kids, and walked off. Silence came in behind him, but it was not the same silence as the first day. The steel did not feel like a threat now. It felt like a roof we had earned. Amaya stood near the scissor lift where I had first seen her, the welding mask lifted, the strap in her hand. Her face was tired in the way that comes after real work. Soot lined the edges of her hair. A faint line from the mask sat on her forehead. I walked over, slow, giving her time to move if she wanted space. She did not move. "I did not expect an angel behind the sparks," I said again, softer this time. Her mouth curved. "We have been over this," she said. "Angels do not grind steel." Quote, "No," I said, "they keep roofs from falling and call you out when you want to leave early." That made her laugh. The sound was small and warm, and it moved through me in a way the space heater never could. She stepped closer. A single step, but enough that I felt the heat of her under the jacket. "Why did you really stay this week?" she asked. "You could have stamped the drawings, sent an email, and gone back downtown." I thought about answering with something smooth, something professional. I did not. "Because somebody tried to make the steel fail on purpose," I said, "and you were standing under it." Her eyes softened and sharpened at the same time. "You do this for every project?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "Just the ones where someone fights as hard as the building does." Her hand came up. Not fast. Not shy. She hooked 2 fingers into the front of my coat and tugged, just enough to close the last inch between us. "You still taste like cinnamon," she said. "You still smell like ozone," I answered. "Romantic," she said dryly. "It is, to me," I said. She rose onto her toes and kissed me. There was no rush in it this time. No storm outside. No inspector looming. Just slow pressure, the kind that carries more heat than a welding arc. My hands settled at her waist. Not gripping, not pulling, just holding her there, solid and safe. I waited for the tiny check I knew she would give. It came in the way she leaned in harder, in the way her hands left my coat and slid up to rest on my shoulders, fingers curling into the fabric. That was a yes. I kissed her back deeper, letting the week's tightness finally bleed out. We stood there between half-built walls and stacks of steel while winter pressed at the doors and could not get in. When we broke apart, she stayed close, forehead resting against my chest. I could feel her breathing slow down, matching mine. "Grayson," she said. "Yeah." "You know this does not get easier from here, right?" she asked. "My dad still has invoices to fight. The city still has people like Vince. Work still fails us some days." "I know," I said. "You still want to be here?" she asked. I looked up at the beam, at the plates, we added, at the bright orange torque stripes we both had painted. "The way I see it," I said, "we already put our names on the steel." Her hand tightened on my jacket. When she looked up at me, there was nothing halfway in her eyes. "Then stay," she said simply. I nodded once. "Okay." She smiled, small and fierce. "Okay." Weeks later, the bay was no longer just a job site. It was a place I knew by sound and smell. The hiss of a grinder, the crackle of an arc, the knock of boots on steel stairs. Rivera Steel kept the contract. Vince disappeared into a quiet investigation. The union kept their promise. The city engineer checked in sometimes, usually with coffee and a non-official walkthrough. Work went on. So did we. Some nights, after the crew left and the generators wound down, I would find Amaya sitting on the beam we had reinforced, legs dangling, helmet off, watching the city lights through the open bay door. I would climb up beside her, sit close enough that our shoulders brushed, and she would lean into that contact like it was a brace she had chosen. We talked about load paths and family. about torque and rent, about how a shop like hers had to be twice as perfect to be called equal. We did not fix the world. We did not stop every bad inspector or dirty bid. But we kept this roof from falling. We kept this steel honest. We chose each other in the middle of all of that. And if there is anything I learned on that job, it is this. People will try to pull the bolts out of your life when you are not looking. They will half-slip pins and call it nothing. They will hope you crack under load so they can sell the story of your failure. So you check your bolts. You mark your stripes. You find the ones who tighten things with you instead of loosening them in the dark. You look for the person who stands between you and the cold because they want to, not because they are playing a part. The rest is noise. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this. Thanks for listening.